it's awesome to have you on the show because of the fact that I'm kind of a security geek. I've participated in Sector before here in Toronto a couple times, and Azure Sentinel, I haven't had a chance to really dive deep into it. I've done some presentations in terms of what it is, but I'm so excited to have you on board because you have that wealth of knowledge in terms of how do we adopt this? What's so special about Sentinel? Is it going to replace all the security professionals at the workplace? So many questions that I have for you, which is so awesome to have you on the show. So really quickly, let's dive deep into it. Does Azure Sentinel replace the role of security for the IT professional?
No, definitely not. So Azure Sentinel is supposed to make the job of an IT security professional, in particular a security operations person, easier so they can focus on the really important things. So research shows, and this is done by a number of different companies, that there's quite a few common security operations challenges. Usually it's you don't have enough security operations people because it is quite a niche bit of security. The other thing is that there are usually too many alerts and too many incidents for SOC analysts to deal with. And it doesn't matter if you're a small company that has one SOC analyst or you're a large company that has 100, the size of your company is proportional to the number of security alerts you're probably getting. So all businesses have that same pain. So and research shows that something like 45% of alerts generated from a security operations perspective never get investigated, never. So, I mean, that's crazy if you think about it. That's a lot of things that don't get investigated. So rather than so we talk about, say, Azure Sentinel, it's this great new tool, it's going to make things easier, we're going to use machine learning and ML. And you're quite right that sometimes people say, oh my god, are you just trying to get rid of real people? Are you just automating and machine learning away people? And that's not the case at all, because the idea is, and the whole ethos of Sentinel is that we use automation and we use machine learning to get rid of the noise so that real people can focus on the incidents and the alerts that actually need a real person to look at them, because they will never go away. There's always going to be things that a machine learning model can't deal with, or that you've never seen before, so we wouldn't have automation to deal with it. So the idea is that actually we're making SOC analysts or security operations center analysts' lives much easier, and Sentinel can help them have a better experience and effectively, protect their organization better.
And that's usually the misconception, right? The whole aspect of, if I include AI, artificial intelligence, into my business, it's going to eliminate jobs, or it's going to take away from people's roles, and that's not the case. It's like you said, there are so many things that are not checked out. There are so many security instances that I don't have time to touch this. I don't have time to bother with this, and they don't get dealt with. And then a security concern happens down the road, and it's based on what was missed previously. At least with Sentinel, you have the ability to control automated response if it's required, and you have the ability to at least address it as it's brought to your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you said, AI can get a bad rep for people think, oh, if you're going to use AI or automation, then you're going to get rid of people's jobs. But in fact, it will just help security operations people and security operations centers deal more efficiently with alerts. Because there's also something called alert fatigue, and it's a proven human behavior. And if you want a more day-to-day term, think of the boy who cried wolf. The boy who cried wolf kept saying, oh, there's a wolf, there's a wolf, there's a wolf. Everybody rushed to help him, and it was a false alarm. He was making it up. And then finally, when he did cry wolf and there was a wolf, nobody came to help him because they were used to this boy faking it. So And if we apply that to security operations, sometimes a person will just and it's nothing against an individual person. It's not a personality flaw. It's just the way human brains work. Is that if we see the same thing over and over again, and we're like, oh, look at that alert. Oh, wait, no, it's a false alarm. Oh, look, it's a false alarm. The one time that maybe it's not a false alarm, we could miss it. Whereas if we're using automation doesn't get bored. Machine learning doesn't get bored because it
Right.
doesn't think. So we can get rid of those mundane, repetitive tasks and have them dealt with in an appropriate way. And it means that SOC analysts get to really dig into the juicy stuff. So yeah, it's definitely not about getting rid of jobs and getting rid of people, because at least from my perspective, I don't think we will ever be able to completely get rid of people. People are really important, and people can think independently, and machine learning models can't. So there'll always be outliers and anomalies and things that have never happened before that are going to need a person.
Right. And not only that, there are some industries like healthcare and financial that require that human interaction to keep to their ISO standards. So it can't just be everything being put forward as automation. You have to have that human touch, that human response based on the requirements for certification that these industries have to adhere to.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact is, I don't think anybody wants everything completely 100% automated. You want as much as possible, particularly the mundane, boring things automated that you do time and time again. But that's about just being efficient and actually giving your workers probably just a better day-to-day job. So I see AI and ML and automation as a really helpful tool to make workers' lives better. It's definitely nothing about getting rid of roles.
Now, from a deployment model, what type of
Yep.
infrastructure do I set up a box at my organization? Is it cloud-based? What is the deployment of Sentinel look like?
So Sentinel is, as you said, it's cloud-based. So what that means is it's using parts of Azure it uses aspects of Azure that have been around pre-Sentinel. So the engine underneath Sentinel is Log Analytics, which is part of Azure Monitor. For our automation, we use Playbooks, and that's used for automation throughout Azure. Sentinel sits on top of a log analytics workspace, kind of as an enrichment layer and with its own container of information and security focused information. So essentially, it is a cloud-based solution. So there's no infrastructure to set up, because Sentinel, all you do is turn on your log analytics workspace, you activate Sentinel over the top of it, and it's there, it's going. So you get everything's already set up for you, the infrastructure wise. If you've worked with an on-premise SIEM or SIM, I realize I haven't even used the word SIEM yet. So for those of you more probably in the Americas, if you say SIM, I do mean SIEM, which is Security Information and Event Management. And there's been tools out there for a long time that can do that. And what they do is essentially gather logs. Now, Sentinel is Microsoft's implementation of a SIEM. And as you were saying, traditional on-prem SIEMs used to have a lot of infrastructure that you had to build. So you had to build virtual machines to run the database. You had to build collecting machines. There was a lot of upfront work involved. Now with Sentinel, that's not the case. Essentially, all you have to do is activate it on the log analytics workspace, and then you can start connecting data sources. So much easier to set up. And there's as we talk about it more in this session, hopefully it'll become obvious. The idea was, when we created it, was that you could get it up and running and giving you some meaningful results within a couple of hours, if that. Whereas for anybody who's set up an on-prem SIEM, I'm sure you know, it can often take weeks and even months to get anything meaningful out of it. So definitely very easy to set up, and in comparison with what has come before it, for sure.
Now, actually, so we just got word that we're having some technical difficulties in the background. The image might flicker, or the signal might flicker off. We just got word back from our corporate office saying that, no, we're going to stay on. So if we do get interrupted, not to fret, we'll be right back if that should cut in and out. It looks like our one feed has stopped working already. No, we're still on. I apologize about that, Sarah. This is a home outfit, right? So we don't,
That's
producer,
the deal with doing things live. That is the deal.
Producer Pierre is doing his best efforts out in Ottawa, Canada, which apparently is your favorite city in Canada for a certain specific reason, but we won't talk about that on the show.
No, we talked about that last time. You probably heard far too much about that yesterday.
That was funny. It was just funny. I wanted to chat a little bit about, because the fact that you can get this up and running in hours and get insight in hours in respect to what's going on in your organization. Does this work cloud only? Is there a offering for on-premises as well?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Now, and one I probably get asked at least once a day, probably more. So the whole premise of a SIEM is that you collect logs from your entire organization so you can get that security overview, because you can't understand if like, for one, I have a sticker that has this on. I'm afraid I don't have one to hand, otherwise I should have brought it out before. And it says, and you may have seen it, it's not my phrase, that's out of scope, said no attacker ever, because attackers aren't going to just go to a particular part of your organization. They're not going to just look at your endpoints. They're not just going to look at your Active Directory. An attacker is going to get a foothold in your organization, and then they will traverse through your environment looking for something of value, whether that's data, something else, who knows. It would all depend on your organization. But the reason that it's really important to bear that in mind is that if you want to have oversight of potential security incidents and you want to monitor it using a SIEM, you have to be able to ingest log sources from everywhere in your environment. And so, of course, Azure Sentinel does support that. It supports on-premise, it supports non-Microsoft non-Microsoft products, because there would be, although it runs in Azure and Microsoft has created this product, there would be absolutely no point in us creating a Microsoft-only SIEM or a cloud-only SIEM, because the reality is most organizations, apart from perhaps some very, very new ones that have been born in the cloud, most organizations have an on-premise footprint and are going to, for the foreseeable future, it'll probably get smaller. And even Microsoft has an on-premise footprint still. We're not 100% cloud. So, of course, you can collect things from on-premise. The way that we do that, there's various different ways. The most common one that we use is to download and install the Microsoft Monitoring Agent, which you may have come across for other things because it is used for other products as well. And what you will do is, if it's installed on a Windows box, you can take in Windows events. If it's installed on Linux, it will bring up syslog. And yeah.
Uh-oh.
Cool. Do you want me to keep going? Or
yes, please. I apologize. Yeah. We're seeing.
No, it's cool. I'll just keep going. That's all right. Yeah. Cool. It's the joy of live stream. Love it. Demo gods. At least I haven't even started demoing yet. My goodness. Like, demo gods, be kind. Be kind. So we use the Microsoft Monitoring Agent. You may also know it as the Log Analytics Agent or the OMS Agent. It has many names, or it has had many names in the past, like quite a few Microsoft products have. So that's a way to get in server events from on-prem. It's also used in the cloud. And if you have applications on-prem as well, of course, we can take logs from them as well. How we do it would depend precisely on the application and how we would bring that up into Sentinel, but it's absolutely possible to do. And I think this is a good time to segue possibly into talking about the different connectors that we have, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm sure everybody online is waiting for the demo, and they don't want to see my face anymore. They want to see the demo. Exactly. Demo.
So cool. So as you can see, there's a couple of different ways to get things into Sentinel. The first and most easy way is to use data connectors. Now, data connectors are essentially like custom parsers for a particular data source. Don't take the analogy too far. They're not straight parsers. They are a bit more than that. But this is the first place you should go and look to get data into Sentinel. Now, you can see at the top of the page there, I have 60 connectors at the moment. Now, we're always, if there's anybody watching who's been following Sentinel since it went GA about a year ago now, you'll know that we've added so many more connectors. I know that we've added about 20 connectors in the past 6 weeks. So our rate of change in the amount of connectors we're adding all the time is really, really quick. So do keep an eye out because we're always adding more. And part of my team's job is to listen to our customers and understand what common data sources they'd like to see as a connector. And we always love feedback on that. So go to user voice and upvote any connectors. Do check to see if there's already a request. We do have quite a few requests for different kind of data connectors, and do upvote them if you also need that connector for your business, because we do pay attention. But as you can probably appreciate, because Sentinel's still pretty new, we do have quite a big backlog, and we're going as fast as we can. Anyway, I'm not going to read them all out because you can, because I'm sure everyone on here can go and have a look themselves. But I'm just going to scroll down the list and maybe point out a couple of ones of particular note. So for starts, we have AWS CloudTrail. So if you're using a hybrid environment, and by hybrid in this case I mean using other clouds, then we can also ingest logs from other clouds as well, which is important, as I said, because you need to be able to. There's no point having an Azure only SIEM or a Microsoft only SIEM. We can also take in other AWS logs as well through APIs. Of course, as you would expect, we've got Azure AD, Azure ATP, and lots of different Microsoft security products. We also have our third-party network providers, third-party partners in the network space. So things like Barracuda, Checkpoint, Cisco ASAs. And then an important one here is common event format. Now, common event format is, or CEF, as you may call it, is a standard way of structuring logs that are already parsed. And this is a way that a lot of different devices will output in CEF. And so this is a good catch-all for lots of different products. So CEF is a good one to call out there. We also have, as we said, there's more Microsoft things coming, Office 365. If you use Okta as your identity store, we've now got a connector for Okta. And you can see if you're using vulnerability management tools like Qualys, we have that. And we have Symantec, Trend Micro. So if you're using some other companies' EDR solutions, then they're here. And Carbon Black as well. So there's lots of different things. Sentinel is not just designed just for Microsoft and Azure, and that's really important to remember. So first thing you should do is come here, have a look if you've got a connector. If there isn't a connector, although I probably don't have time to go into it in too much detail today, the other way to bring things in is through the the Microsoft monitoring agent, which I talked about before. And we can also bring things in via APIs. If you go on the tech community website, and which I really recommend you do, because engineering write really cool blogs all the time about cool things you can do with Sentinel. You can make a custom connector, and a custom connector is usually done with a combination of an Azure function, maybe a logic app as well, and we use APIs to pull data in. So suffice to say, if you can get a log from Sentinel, if you can get a log from your product, whether it's an application, whether it's a server, I can get it into Sentinel for you, and then you can monitor it and query it, etc. So I'll just show you, just for an example, just how easy it is to actually connect things with the connectors. So you can see here, this is Azure AD. I know I've picked a Microsoft one, but you can see here in the configuration, it says connect Azure AD logs to Azure Sentinel. Now there is a checkbox there for sign-in logs and audit logs. Now you might have noticed it's grayed out. The reason it's grayed out is because we do practice what we preach in Microsoft, and this particular demo that I'm using, I do not have permissions to connect and disconnect different data sources because I don't need to.
And that's
Oh, we seem to be getting another audio feedback in there. Oh, it's gone.
You want me to
Apologies.
keep?
Yes,
That's
please
okay.
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry
okay.
about that.
No, it's okay. And so you can see that we actually practice the principle of least privilege, and I don't have access to add or delete from this particular demo I'm showing you. However, on yours, all you would do is tick the box and click connect, and the logs would start flowing in. So it's really, really, really easy, as you can see.
One of the things that you might be worried about when you see this
Oh, sorry, producer Pierre, we're getting audio again.
Yeah. So you can see here that we've got all different things that are useful for this data source. So we have workbooks, which I'll talk about more in a minute, which is our way of using dashboards and visualizing things. We've got some query samples. Now, all the queries, if you've already used Log Analytics or other Microsoft products, you may already be familiar with it. But all of our queries are done in KQL, which stands for Kusto Query Language. It's used in other Microsoft products too and across Azure, so it's definitely worth learning. If you're familiar with any kind of logic-based structured query language, you'll probably be able to pick it up really, really easily, particularly if you know SQL. It's not identical to SQL, but it's pretty similar. And we also offer, and this is my call to action early, but I'll repeat it again at the end. Microsoft has tons of free training. We have a Pluralsight course on KQL, and you should absolutely go and have a look at it. There's lots of material out there to be able to learn KQL, and it is quite straightforward. And then down here, we have analytic templates. So analytic templates are that's how we write what you may know as detection rules. So these are the queries that we run to. These are the queries that run in Sentinel at a scheduled time period, and if results are returned from that query, it suggests something's going wrong or something suspicious, and it'll raise an incident. So you can see here, these are the inbuilt ones. We do have many out-of-the-box detections. We're adding to them all the time. So if you're starting off in cloud security and you have no idea what you should be looking for or how to write a rule, you can just use the templates that we have in Sentinel. So another reason that it's another way that we're trying to make it very, very accessible to everybody. So that was a big thing on data connectors. The one that I want to talk about, as I was saying that we are adding new connectors all the time, which we are. One I want to talk about that was released in public preview very, very recently is Teams. Now, Teams, I think, is the only reason I'm calling this one out is because it's very new and it's been one that's been requested quite a lot. So in order to enable Teams, you'll go to Office 365, and in the configuration here, you can see we have Exchange, SharePoint, and you'll see Teams in preview. Now, as I said before, for this particular demo, I can't add Teams, but if you have the correct permissions in your workspace, you would be able to add Teams, and then you'll start to get logs. It will show things like, who's been talking to who's uploaded files, basically all the activities that people might do within Teams. And I guess the reason this is really pertinent at the moment is because many people around the world, myself included, are working from home, and so collaboration software in the last 6 months has become even more critical. And so it's really important to understand from a security perspective what's going on in Teams. So if you're using Teams and you've got Sentinel, make sure you go and enable the Teams connector, because it should be there and available for you to connect. It is also free to connect. It's one of our free log sources. So not every log source is free. Do make sure you go and check. We've got a lot of details on that. Or ping your friendly Microsoft people and we can tell you. Teams is one of the ones that is free to ingest, so you've got no reason not to do it. So definitely go and do Teams. Teams is a good one. And then I'm going to move on to talk about workbooks, because I think workbooks is something I'm really, really passionate about, and I think it's often overlooked as what a powerful tool it can be. So workbooks are how we visualize things in Sentinel. If you followed Sentinel from its very early days, you may remember that workbooks used to be called dashboards, and dashboards isn't an unfair description of them in many ways. So We use workbooks because it does align with Power BI, but also because workbooks are more than dashboards. They can be just used for straightforward visualization, but they can also be more interactive. So I just wanted to talk a bit about that because I think it's one that we often overlook. I'll show you. As you've probably worked out from the theme here, we do have templates for workbooks for all the data sources that we have. So you can see here, I've just opened up the Azure AD audit logs workbook for this particular workspace, and you can see I'm looking at the last 90 days, and it's got these different queries, and these are pre-built by Microsoft in the templates. So again, if you're not sure what to look at for this data source, if you're either new to doing security operations or maybe just new to doing it in the cloud, this gives you an idea of the kind of things you could look at. So we can see here things like we can see the top user activities that have happened. So change user license, add member to group. We've got our top active users, and then the success and failure of the actual audit logs running. Now, all of this is fully customizable. If I go into edit and then I edit, let's see if I can edit one of the right things. If I edit this query, the query is, as you can see, powered by KQL, which is what we use for everything in the background. You can change up this query. We can change the visualization to something else. So we could change it to a bar chart, scatter chart. Oh, a scatter chart won't work for this. I always manage to pick the wrong type of visualization. Every time I do this, tiles we can do. Again, it depends on the kind of query as to what visualization makes sense. You can tell maths was not my strong point at school doing visualizations, but yeah, if you want to change it up, if you want to do a really funky graph there, you can. So you can see again, we've got lots and lots of templates. We actually have more templates than connectors, and the reason for that is some connectors actually have multiple workbooks that we've created. And then you'll see here with this one, we've got one, and it says underneath the creator was the Azure Sentinel community, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But these are workbooks that have been created by the community. So the community may still be Microsoft engineering. We do create quite a lot, but it might be other people as well. And we're really encouraging people who are using Sentinel to come and contribute to the community, contribute to our GitHub. I'll probably be reviewing at least some of your code, depending on what you submit, to share what you can with the community where it's appropriate. So for example, I'm just going to scroll down to something that I call that is the visualization demo. And this is a workbook that I made just to actually show all the different kinds of visualizations that you can have and cool things you can do with workbooks. So this is a very, very straightforward query I have in the background here. It's actually just counting the number of events and alerts. But you can see we can put text in. That can also be markdown. Here, this is called a grid. You can see that it's essentially just a pretty way of displaying a query result. Down here we have tiles, which I did change something to on the workbook before. Of course, we have charts and graphs, as you would expect. I'm not going to change these around because I always get it wrong. But we've got lots of different types of bar charts. You can do pie charts, line graphs. Again, different things make sense for different queries and visualization. And getting into the more interesting stuff, this is where workbooks are different to just dashboarding. So we have something called time brushing. So what I'm going to do here is highlight and drag between a particular time period. So I've got July the 20th to July the 26th. And it's actually used what I've selected here as a variable to fill in the query beneath here. And so what you can see here is all those different is actually the results of the query for this time period. So if I do it again here from August the 3rd to August the 6th, it's actually taken what I've selected here as a variable and put it into the query and the subsequent box below. So you can see how actually workbooks can be much more interactive. And if I show you this dynamic content, here we've got a list. This is just a straightforward query showing the different types of all the machines that Sentinel can see in this workspace and how many alerts they have. Now, if I click on one of these machines, it will then subsequently use the name of that machine to search for those alerts per resource. Now, this is quite a straightforward example of this, but what it shows is that you could actually construct with a workbook a guided investigation. So what happens here is, a SOC analyst would actually be led through the workbook, and they would just click on certain things and then it would run queries. So this is a very, very, very powerful tool that people overlook a little bit. So do go check it out. And just so you know, this demo workbook that I'm actually showing you here is available on our GitHub. So if you just want to have a play around with it, then go and download it. Please go and download it. It's called the Visualization Demo Workbook in GitHub too. So the very last thing, of course, is a bit of personalization. So all I wanted to show you here was we can, of course, do things like highlighting certain columns. So if the result comes back high, we can put it as red, so it really pops on the screen. So there is a ton of cool things you can do with workbooks, as you can see. Whew, okay. Next, I'll talk about our community because I was segueing it into a little bit there, and we don't talk about this as much as we should. So we do have an Azure Sentinel GitHub repo. It's, of course, fully public. It's run by the Microsoft engineering team, including myself. And in here, we do add lots of different collateral for Azure Sentinel. So, for example, you can see we have connectors, hunting queries. We have more playbooks, which I'll talk about in a second. There are workbooks, and we're adding to these all the time. And if you see something that doesn't look right, or you can improve one of our queries, please send us a PR or raise an issue so we can review it. And if you have anything that you want to contribute, then please do submit it. We'd love you to do so. A couple of months ago, we were running an Azure Sentinel hackathon, and there were like cash prizes for submitting interesting Sentinel solutions for problems. Now, I don't know. I'm sure we'll be running one again in the future. That one's now closed, but you also can get, we've also started getting badges and contributor badges. So if you want to up your kudos in the Microsoft tech community, please throw us some PRs or raise some issues if you see there's something wrong so we can address it. We really appreciate your feedback. So definitely go check this out. It's something that not everyone's aware of. So I always like to call it out whenever I get an opportunity to talk to the community about it. And yeah, go check it out. And if you do playbooks, at least I'll probably be reviewing your PR. So send me nice playbooks, please. Send me nice playbooks that don't require too much reviewing from a PR perspective. That would be amazing. That would be great. Cool. Oof.
Wow, that was a lot.
That was a lot. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a breather and ask if you have any questions.
Yes,
Jason.
There's a ton of questions coming in, actually. So that's awesome time to take a break right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
First off, kudos. This is amazing in terms of what you and the team have put together for Sentinel and the enablement of Sentinel. The big thing for me, too, is the whole inclusion of community. Microsoft, has taken this stance in regards to including the community in the creation of services that we offer on Azure, and the whole aspect of learning from our audience, learning from our customers in terms of their way of implementation. The GitHub repo, huge opportunity to have your voice heard in terms of your needs, in terms of what needs to be enabled or made available inside of Azure Sentinel to adhere to your business specifically. Definitely, Sarah, awesome call out in regards to the GitHub offering. And we'll share that URL, at the end of the show.
Cool. Yeah, no, definitely. Were there any burning questions that lots of people are asking that you want to answer now? I'm happy to stop in the middle and talk questions if you want.
Well, a couple of questions did come in. One in pertaining to data connectors specifically. In the advent of adoption of IoT and it becoming the new endpoint that is an attack vector, what is there an offering for Azure Sentinel that'll address IoT specifically?
We don't have anything specifically built in as a connector at the moment. Okay. However, you may know that Microsoft recently acquired an IoT company called CyberX, and so the CyberX team is being amalgamated into our wider Azure security engineering team. So so we're listening to what customers need in that space, and so certainly as long as your IoT provides logs, we could do it anyway. I don't know specifically if we're going to have a specific connector, but I would say all signs, to talk like the magic 8-ball, all signs point to yes at some point in the future.
The next question for you. I am a partner and I currently manage multiple tenants in multiple workspaces. Is my organization required to create a new Sentinel instance for each workspace and each tenant?
Good question. Now, this is for a partner perspective. From a partner perspective, we generally recommend that you use Azure Lighthouse. So you may know Azure Lighthouse as it has because it is used for other things outside Sentinel. But Azure Lighthouse is a way of managing other Azure tenancies from another Azure tenancy. So from a partner perspective, if you're wanting to be a managed security service provider or MSSP, then what you would do is you would have sort of your Sentinel of Sentinels, for want of a better phrase, in your tenant, and then you would use Azure Lighthouse to look into and manage each of your customers' tenants. And there's a lot of advantages to that, because what it means is that your customer's data stays within their tenant and you're not taking it out. It's you going in to manage their Sentinel instance. Of course, that's important for data sovereignty. It can be important for regulatory purposes as well, depending on the location you're in. And what it also means is that that your customer has to grant you through Azure Lighthouse access to their Sentinel tenant. So they do have some control on their end as well. Now, what that means is if you're a partner and you're managing Azure Sentinel centrally, when you're using Lighthouse, what it means is that although all your customers' workspaces are separate and their tenancies are separate, you can get centralized views. So you can have one incident page. Now, I don't have one to hand right now, but essentially, rather than seeing I'll show you in the demo. So what you would see if you've set this up is, rather than just seeing a list of incidents here for one workspace.
Could you just quickly share your screen?
Is it not sharing?
No, it's all good. There we go.
Is it back?
Yep, it's back.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say I didn't stop sharing, but yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good. So what
Live
you
TV.
see here. Yeah, it's live. It's cool. So what you'd see here is there would be an additional column here in the incidents, and you would be able to see, it would also have a column showing you the name of the workspace. So you would have a centralized view of incidents, but they still would be separate, because of course it's important, if you're a partner, that you still maintain that separateness, the separation between your different customers. I hope that answers your question. What I'd really recommend you do, we have quite a few webinars on managing multiple workspaces from a partner perspective on the Azure security community. They're all recorded. We've definitely got a few on this topic. So we're going to put the links up at the end as well, but go check out the Azure security community and have a look at the MSSP recordings that we have in there and the webinars, because they talk about this in loads of detail.
So one other question that's come across in terms of firewall, is there the ability to manage firewalls from Sentinel in terms of log monitoring? And does it have to be a cloud-based firewall? Could it be an on-premise firewall? Like, what is the connectors available for that?
Okay, good question. So I guess I just want to clarify, when we say manage, if it's just manage, to me means actually making changes on the firewall, but that might just be my interpretation of that phrase. So you don't manage a firewall from Azure Sentinel, but you certainly can take the logs in to have oversight of what's happening. So for Azure Firewall, you can see the Azure Firewall connector actually just came in very recently. We also have WAF somewhere as well. And we have, of course, if you're using third-party products within Azure, they're here as well. Now, you make a good point, though. Most people have firewalls on-premise as well, and we can absolutely deal with those as well. Most firewalls will output in a CEF format, common event format. If that's the case, then all we're going to do is all we're going to do is take the Ceph logs. You would have to probably put them in a central collector on either on-premise or in the cloud, and we could send them up into from your on-prem into Sentinel. So very, very possible. It would just require probably a common event format collector, which we can do using the Microsoft monitoring agent. So yeah, definitely possible. And of course, I'd recommend that you had your on-prem and your cloud firewalls all going into Sentinel for monitoring. Do bear in mind though, do pay attention to your logging levels in your firewalls. Firewalls are traditionally very, very noisy and they create a lot of logs. And because Sentinel is ingestion based for charging, do make sure that you're not over logging your firewall activities, because I have seen that many times before with customers. Like, don't be sending Sentinel every single connection request. Like, keep it for like the denies and things like that. Otherwise, you could end up with like a pretty big bill and not so much and limited value from a security monitoring perspective. So there's always a balance to be struck there with any data source, but firewalls are like a serial offender in this space, which is why I'm going to call it out. Check your logging levels. Don't log too much.
So last question that's come in, you made a comment about connectivity to Teams. Does that include all of Office 365 or just specifically Teams?
So it's not all of Office 365. Let me find my Office 365 connector again, and I'll show you. So you can see here, these are the current parts of Office 365 that we bring in. So there's Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. Now, that's what we have at the moment. That could definitely, I would say that's almost definitely going to be, we're going to include more things in the future. But as you probably know, if you've ever looked at the Office activity log through the Graph API, Office activities are very, very significant. There's a lot of stuff there. If there's something specific you're looking for, it is possible to use the API from Office 365 to pull certain selected additional events to this into Sentinel. But at the moment, it's just these 3 connectors that we have. But yeah, if you need more, it can be done. We just pull it out of the API. But again, Office activity can be very busy, very noisy. So you want to be careful what you bring in there.
Now, that brings up another great question. When does it become too much? When is, is there ever an opportunity to bog down Sentinel with too much feedback, too much monitor of the logs? Is there a specific balance? Like you said that on the firewall side, which definitely makes sense. But what about on the Sentinel side itself?
Yeah, not really, not in terms of, so Sentinel's built, of course, within Azure. It's built on top of Azure Monitor, which is our huge monitoring platform that's covered by every single, that's covered for all of our customers. So in terms of, can you throw too much data at Sentinel, for it to start breaking? No, I'd say no. It's log analytics. So just log analytics itself has, off the top of my head, I believe we have tested it up to 4 petabytes of ingestion. Which is, if someone can realistically throw 4 petabytes at log analytics, more than that, then let me know. But in terms of an individual organization, you would not be able to overload Sentinel in terms of it's going to have too much data, it won't work. Sentinel is elastic, it scales with the cloud, and it will scale as appropriate. I've never come across that as a problem with a customer. However, just because you can do that doesn't mean you should do that, because of course, as I was saying, they're ingestion-based charges, and the more you ingest, the more you pay, because that's how Sentinel works. So definitely, from a performance perspective, no, because I know that, and I assume this question comes from someone who's familiar with on-premise SIEMs. Now, if you haven't worked with an on-premise SIEM, essentially what you would do is you would pay for your licenses, set up the boxes, and then you would throw as many logs as you possibly could at the SIEM until it started to underperform, because it had restrictions on the number of boxes that it was running on. Now, you don't have that problem in the cloud, but of course, you have the cost implication. So there's always a balance to be struck between, is this log necessary? Will it provide some tangible benefit? to my security monitoring, or am I just logging it for the sake of logging it? Because I actually have a sticker, and again, don't have it to hand. I wish I got it out. And it says on it, collection is not detection. Because just because you're collecting a log source does not mean it's going to help you from a security perspective. If you're collecting a log source and you're not running queries on it, and you're not doing proactive hunting on it, you really need to be asking yourself, why am I putting this in my SIEM? What is the point? If you just need it for archiving for a regulatory purpose and that's it, you'd be much better putting it in blob storage. It's much, much cheaper. And, if you're not using it for security monitoring, there's no point putting it in a SIEM. But, to be honest with you, it's very easy for me to sit here and say this, like, don't collect too much, but what is too much? And the reality is it's very, very difficult. It's very, very contextual for a different business. We can give, and we do provide at Microsoft, some general guidelines about what is a useful thing to what are typically useful logs to ingest. But at the end of the day, we can't give you we can't say, if you ingest X, Y, and Z, you will be protected and you have enough visibility. It's so very contextual for every single organization. And it's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we can only give guidance. As a vendor, we can only give some guidance and best practices. But essentially, as a consumer or perhaps you're a reseller of Sentinel, you need to think about your environment or your customer's environment and what is relevant for them. And even a customer with two identical environments, which never happens, by the way, but say it did, if they're working in different jurisdictions, in different industries, they still wouldn't necessarily need to collect the same logs. It's a huge, it's probably the single biggest challenge you have in security operations, aside from not having enough people, is what is enough? What is enough logging wise? Like, what do I need to ingest? Very, very great question. Very, very difficult to answer. And I think it's something that all organizations kind of have to grapple with. Not an easy one at all.
Well, I'm going to give you a quick break from talking because you've covered a lot, and we got more questions coming in. I wanted to say hi to everybody that's on Reddit. Hi to everybody that's on Facebook. Hi to everybody that's on Learn TV. Hi to everybody that's on Twitch, and hi to everybody that's on YouTube. We got a lot of people and a lot of questions coming in. This is probably the most questions we've received in a long time on the show, which is awesome. That means, Sarah, you're really engaging with our audience, and they're very excited to learn more about Sentinel, which is great.
Am I coming back for part 2 then? Are we having part 2 later?
We're definitely going to have you on for part 2. This is so amazing. Next question that's coming to play. Azure Sentinel, being AI-based, requires data to learn how to address attacks. Is the data that's the Sentinel engine using to learn how to stop attacks being fed by all the repositories or all the deployments of Sentinel? And if that's the case, what happens to that data? Is that data, being accessed by this machine learning exercise or this AI implementation and no one else? Or does anybody else see this data? Who gets access to those logs when it's siphoned into Azure Sentinel for reporting and monitoring? Is it secured?
Good question. Very, very good question, actually. And you are very right to ask that kind of question. So a couple of things here, that we have different types of AI and ML in Sentinel. So I'll go through all of them just briefly. So of course, Sentinel takes threat intelligence from the whole Microsoft platform, like the rest of our products do. So Microsoft itself, we get attacked. We run Azure, we run Xbox Live, we run Windows. We see a lot of attacks against Microsoft products and Microsoft infrastructure. And we believe the last figure I get, and it always goes up every time I see an updated one, is something like 9 trillion events a day.
Wow.
Trillion. And so, of course, no one, and that's seeing like failed authentications, suspicious authentications. We scan emails, we scan websites, all kinds of things. So no person can look at those. So what we do with those is we take AI and ML to normalize that data, normalize it, anonymize it, and we look for patterns of suspicious behavior. So, and then what we do with it is, depending on where it's appropriate, we load that information, we push it out through our APIs into different products. So if it's an authentication thing, we would send it into Azure AD Information Protection. If it's infrastructure based, it would go to Azure Security Center, et cetera, et cetera. Now we do that with all our Microsoft products. And that is against the whole Microsoft platform. Everything's anonymized. There's no issue there. For the machine learning models that are specific to Sentinel, which I think is what this question is more directed at. So we have a number of different machine learning models. Now, these machine learning models, they do learn to a certain extent, but they're only learning based on the data within that Sentinel instance. So these machine learning models, before they're put into Sentinel, they are tested internally within Microsoft, and they're also tested with some of our partner customers who we do testing with. So we tweak them, we tune them, and we try and get them really specific so they get as few false positives as possible, because, of course, false positives you can never 100% get rid of, but it is important that we, try and get rid of them as much as possible. We put those machine learning models into Sentinel, but that machine learning model only looks at, well, after it's been put into Sentinel, when you set up a Sentinel instance, it's only looking at the data that it can see to learn within your workspace. So we don't share data between different customers. It's a great question and an understandable concern, but we don't do learning in that sense, because of course that could potentially could be overstepping our jurisdiction as a cloud provider. So no need to worry about that. That doesn't happen. And hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it seems to have answered the question. I think the question had asked, you mentioned earlier about those that practice SIEM on premises, right? And so the concern is that when you're actually deploying to cloud and you're using Sentinel in cloud and data goes in the cloud, it's a question that comes up a lot, especially if you're in financial or healthcare. They have some aspects that have to stay on premises, and the concern is, and what data does go to the cloud and who gains access to that data.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question, and you're right. It's some industries are more concerned about it than others for regulatory purposes, but yeah, it's important for every business to know where your data is going and what's being done with it. So yeah, great question.
Now we just have over 5 minutes left. When, this has been an awesome episode. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. The people that are now asking, where do we find more information? You mentioned tech community. You mentioned the Pluralsight. Where can I go now that I'm intrigued by Azure Sentinel and to learn more? And how do I test and see the functionality for myself?
So if you want to test it, have a play around, then the best thing you can do, and I say this, I've said this throughout my career, is go and turn it on and have a play around with it. So the cool thing is, if you set up a new log analytics workspace and you set up Azure Sentinel over the top of it, from the date that you do that, you get 31 days free to play around with it. So if you ingest logs into it, you won't get any charges for that first 31 days. Now, I will caveat that if you start ingesting over 5 gigabytes at the log analytics level, if you think you're being smart and you think you'll try and ingest as much as possible into log analytics, there is a 5 gig cap. But 5 gigabytes is quite significant for just having a play around and getting a feel for the product. So I would definitely say go and set one up and play around for the first 31 days, just not over 5 gig, and get a feel for it, get a feel for the product and play with it, because you won't generate any charges for yourself as long as you don't hit that cap. And that's definitely the best way to start. The other couple of things are, of course, go look at our GitHub, which I showed before. We have, if my screen's still on, let's see if I can, tech community. Definitely go to the Sentinel tech community. The tech community is great for all the Microsoft products out there. And of course, my browser isn't loading now, but we have the Azure Sentinel blog. It's written by engineering engineering by my team and some of our other colleagues as well. No, it's not loading. But go to the Tech Community Sentinel blog. In there, there's a couple of things I wanted to call out, which is our Azure Sentinel Ninja training. It is quite in-depth Sentinel training. It's all free and online, and you can find it through the tech community. Go and look at that and work your way through that if you want to become more familiar with Sentinel. Finally, okay, there you go. So there's the Azure Sentinel blog. We're always posting new things. You can see one of my colleagues wrote about bidirectional syncing with ServiceNow. There's the Microsoft Teams connector that I was talking about, and our GitHub leaderboard. There's all kinds of things. We're adding, there's quite a big Sentinel support team here in Microsoft. We're adding new articles all the time. And the other one that I'm trying to work through my work around my microphone here. The other thing that is really useful to look at. So go look at Ninja training specifically. That's a really in-depth training. The other thing, which I also mentioned, is our security community webinars. Now, we regularly broadcast. They're broadcast first thing in the morning Pacific time. So as long as you're in North America or Europe, it should be in the daytime for you. For my time for my part of the world, it's usually overnight, but we do record them. So as you can see here, for the previous ones, you can watch them on YouTube. We have the deck and the MP4 recording. We've got Sentinel, but we have other security products as well. But as you can see, because Sentinel's so popular, you can see we have a lot of Sentinel things here as well.
Wow.
So there's an awful lot of things you can go here. Here's the MSSP one for the person who asked the question about MSSP. So definitely go and have a look at some of these. Some of the older ones, I'd probably start with the newer ones because we are changing Sentinel all the time, but there's a really good wealth of information in here too. So yeah, definitely go check this out. It's all free and online. You don't need to have a subscription to anything. So you have there's no barriers to entry. We want people to use Sentinel and become more familiar with it. And then last but not least, of course, we have I wonder if I can Pluralsight.
And while you're bringing that up, really quickly,
Sure.
If they want to get a hold of you on social, what's the best way to get a hold of you and the team?
Yeah, you can ping me on Twitter as well. My handle is _, because I have a really common name, so of course I have to have an underscore. _ Sarah Yo, so SARAHYO. That's my, you'll find me on Twitter. At the moment, I post a lot of pictures of my dog, but I actually do Sentinel things as well. You wouldn't know that at the moment from the number of dog pictures on there, but hey, if you want to tweet me, feel free. Happy to answer questions or try and help out where I can. And then, as I said, as it's loading now, last but not least, we have the Pluralsight course on KQL. This is free, entirely free. You just have to sign up for Pluralsight, but taking this actual course is free. So yeah, plenty of things out there to get you going.
Sarah, thank you very much for being on the show. We're definitely going to have you back if you have the time for it, because there was a lot more questions that come in that we're definitely eager to get on to get you the answer on the show. We've got 30 seconds left. Quick shout out to producer Pierre. It's late here in Eastern time zone. So thank you, producer Pierre, for hanging out. If you want to get a hold of producer Pierre, you can get a hold of him on Twitter at Wired Canuck. If you want to get a hold of me for some reason, you can reach me at Wireless Life on Twitter as well. The whole team is available using the hashtag AZUpdate, as well as our blog on Tech Community, which is itopstock.com, which this video and other videos show up from time to time and sharing information directly to IT professionals. Sarah, thank you very much again for joining us on the show today. It's really super awesome to have you on here. Hope to have you on here again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great. And thanks everyone for all the questions. Sorry if we didn't get around to it, but you can tweet me if you need if it's a burning question you need an answer to. Otherwise, sounds like I've got another date sometime in the future to come back. So we'll do it again.
Definitely. The Friday show is still happening, so we will still see you this Friday. Thomas Maurer will be joining me again. It will be the pre-Ignite show, so you definitely want to check out that show, and we'll see everybody on Friday. Have a great night, everyone, or a great morning.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.